Um, so we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome, Sudeshna. Welcome to Gentle Warrior Conversations. Uh,
Hi, Anjali. Thank you.
Good to have you with us today. I look forward to listening to your story, your caregiving journey. But before we go ahead, please tell us who is Sudeshna Banerjee.
It's a good question because I myself have a tough time sometimes thinking of that. I, I am the only child of my parents. We've lived abroad in a few different countries, and it's always been the three of us together. I did my engineering and MBA in US and Canada respectively. I had worked in both those countries for almost a combination of about 2 decades. And the last 6 years, over 6 years, I have been here in Calcutta, India. Been here for both my parents uh, for their caregiving needs. They were aging and having age-related ailments, and so I ended up staying here for a while to be there for them.
So that's when your caregiving journey began.
Yes, actually, my parents and I, like I mentioned earlier, we lived abroad most of our lives, and about 2002 was when they both came back to Calcutta, but I stayed on in US, and I would from time to time hear from my mother about my father not keeping well and having to get hospitalized, and my mom would manage that. And she was well into, I mean, she was in her early 70s. Both my parents were in their early to mid 70s during that time. And I've seen my mother do a lot of heavy lifting while caregiving for my father. My father was quite independent, and except for the times when he would be hospitalized, he would need some looking after. Otherwise, he was the kind to, quickly recuperate and get back on his feet after every health setback. So between 2002 till about 2015, 16, around that time, my mother had been primarily looking after my father, and she used to take care of his medications, make sure they were given in a timely manner. In around the year 2010, there was this one time when my father was quite ill, and I remember my mother telling me, "Look, we need you. We need you to come back and be there with us." And she was quite overwhelmed at that point of time. Little did I know what she was dealing with, let alone understand. So she was dealing with what we call the caregiver burnout. At that point of time, she had just lost her mother, and my father was quite ill in the ICU. And so I chose to take leave and come here and be with my parents for about a few months. And my father came back home. He started recuperating, and he did pretty well. By then, I had already resigned from my work and everything in the US. So once he recovered, I decided to go back to Canada and work on my master's. So after I finished my master's, I again came back home to Calcutta to help to just check in on parents. I used to travel in and out of Calcutta twice every year, just to spend some time with them, take care of any medical checkups that they may have pending, get their medicines and everything in order, whatever tests they required. But when I came back after my graduation in 2014, um, I just came for a break because I was about to start a new job in Canada, and I just thought, okay, let me, because it'll be another year before which I would be able to come back and check in on my parents. So just to get them settled and see if they needed anything. And that is when this my role as a caregiver began, and it was very unexpected. It was not something I had even any clue about. um, Towards the end of 2014, my mother, who used to be very healthy and very strong, suddenly got hospitalized. And, anyways, it was not too bad. She came back home after about 10 days of hospitalization. We worked on rehabilitating her, and then my father got admitted. So, from that end of 2015 till about end of 2016, between both my parents, there were about 11 hospitalizations. And in 2016 of March, my father passed away. He was diagnosed with kidney failure and ended up on dialysis. Um, Given his age and other comorbidities, he passed away after a few months. And right after that, my mother also started keeping quite unwell. For someone who used to be so strong and sturdy for so many decades, sadly, every year she would go through at least one or two hospitalizations, sometimes even three. So she suffered that way for about 4.5 years, and then as of September 2020, she passed away. So my role as a caregiver started uh, looking at two things. One, how my mother played the role of a caregiver to my father, and also how initially I was having to manage both my parents' health, mom and dad at the same time. And again, being the only child, that becomes kind of a challenge sometimes, because when it comes to making decisions, when it comes to sharing the workload, or any of the responsibilities, it's all on you. So even though there are family members or relatives around, but the onus is on you to kind of take the decisions that are important, or that are uh, very time constrained, that require time constraints. So, and also having to figure things out logistically, financially, medically, setting up a team of professionals who would, be there to take care of the patients. That was that had become a pretty big task.
I mean, I could relate with that last part that you spoke about, being the only child in this journey. You really need that kind of support. Sometimes I wish I had an elder brother. Not just that, having to give up your career, having to see your mother experience caregiver burnout, and being not so prepared for or not expecting to be a caregiver so soon. All these challenges, other than that, what were other hurdles or major challenges that you had to deal with?
Some of the challenges that I came across, first and foremost, I barely lived in Calcutta or in India to begin with. So, getting used to a completely new environment, getting an understanding of how the medical system works here, building relationship with the necessary doctors, and trying to create a team where between yourself, the medical professionals, and everybody else involved, trying to build a team and rally the team towards one common goal, which would be to make sure that the patients are well taken care of. And by that I mean patients are well taken care of medically and psychologically. Also, in the process, ensuring that the dignity of the patients are maintained. One of the challenges that I faced was just because both my parents were aging and were dealing with age related ailments. Thankfully, none of them had anything um, dr- uh, drastic, but they were just dealing with one small, like they would have diabetes and then, COPD or something. These are some things most elder patients deal with, or blood pressure and things like that. So, one of the things that I faced while approaching the medical professionals was that just because my parents were elderly, they were not being treated with as much importance as a patient would if they were a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old. And I guess because the doctor patient ratio is quite, I mean, there are just way too many patients. So I think part of the reason is they would maybe want to focus on the patients with whom they have a better chance than the patients who are, anyways, approaching the end of their lives. So for me, that thing was a huge problem because I felt ideally every patient should be treated equally. Um, whether it's a 20-year-old or an 80-year-old, it's not up to the medical professionals to decide who gets better treatment and who does not. And so, what it took for me was to approach each of the doctors personally and help them understand from my point of view or from my perspective that these are the only living relatives I've got. They are my world. So, please treat them like you would if they were your own parents. And the other thing that I faced was, and thankfully, what happened was some of the doctors were really understanding, very supportive, and they came around and they were there with my parents and me till the very end. And in fact, they actually began to take care of me also, as and when they would say like, okay, I'm also not doing too well or I'm getting burnt out, they would, stop me and say, hey, take care of yourself, get yourself treated. If I have a cold or a cough or a fever or whatever, they will be like, take care of yourself first and then, take care of your parents. So thankfully, I'm very thankful that we were able to find doctors who were as compassionate. The other thing I struggled with was understanding the landscape of the medical industry here in Calcutta. Um, the last time I was here in Calcutta was probably when more than 20 years ago. So for me, the medical industry had evolved quite a bit, and not only that, I felt it had become very commercialized, especially when you go to super specialty hospitals. Um, where you would expect a holistic medical approach for treatment, that would not necessarily be the case. It would end up becoming more like it would end up becoming more like uh, just services provided and you pay for it. So I had to get my parents out of this specialty hospital setup and put them in smaller nursing homes. And then, approach each of the specialists who were taking care of my parents and request them to, treat my parents at those nursing homes, which was a much, um, it was challenging but more doable
Yeah.
with in terms of being able to work with the doctors. The other thing that I struggled with was, and it goes back to the elder patients not getting as much attention or as much care. It's because of the non-existence of the concept of palliative care, and that I believe was something that I believe today also we need to work on and get more attention to, bring about more awareness. So, and maybe if we have more awareness of palliative care, we can then address issues like geriatric care or even um, uh, counseling for geriatric patients, or and also for their caregiver. Please give me a second.
What you just said makes so much sense to me, and this is something that even I experienced. Even my grandparents, the kind of attention that they get is not as good as one would give to a younger person. And qualities such as treating your patients equally, with compassion, with empathy, being friendly to the caregiver, all these values are much makes a doctor or a healthcare professional much better. And you also happen to mention that you found friendly healthcare professionals in your journey who happen to advise and look after your health as well. From that, and what other things, what other routines, or what other factors did you uh, involve in your routine such that you took care of yourself?
Initially, looking after myself was never a priority, which was a very bad idea because once my health began to uh, scream out for help, that's when I realized that wasn't a very good idea. But thankfully, some of my mother's doctors were nice enough to, notice that in me. And they would tell me to slow down. We are there to, take care of your mom. And also help me realize that everything that is being done is the best that can be done for them. So, not to get over obsessed, not to get over um, involved, but to try and find a balance between caregiving for the patient and caregiving for yourself. And which was a great blessing because initially it was hard to find doctors who would understand the situation from a caregiver's perspective. And like I said, not much of palliative care is, uh, excuse me, there isn't much of palliative care awareness here. And also the fact that counseling. Um, Counseling is again a concept which many people shy away from. And counseling for both the patient and the caregiver as a joint session is very important. As long as the patients are lucid, coherent, and are able to follow instructions, they should be able to attend online or in person counseling sessions because, see, from a caregiver's point of view, it is very hard to understand sometimes what the patient is going through physically, psychologically. When their body is ailing, they become like the symptoms that you see is that you see are something like mood swings, lethargy, um, depression, things like that. But from a caregiver's perspective, sometimes that's very difficult to comprehend, especially when you don't have that experience. So you need sometimes a professional, be it in the form of a doctor or a counselor, to help you understand that when the patients are going through such changes in their bodies due to the ailments, they may develop a lack of taste or a lack of interest. So, so how do you um, create that interest in them, or how do you try to help them find comfort in the situation that they are in? At the same time, maintaining their dignity. My two most important goal was to help make sure that they were comfortable and that they had their dignity maintained till the very end.
I'm sure the ones who are watching the live are also smiling with me because I am learning a lot from whatever you're saying. Uh, not only the importance of a support system, not only the importance of a better healthcare system, but also the need to have sources that provide education and prepare you for your caregiving journey. So I am definitely going to, keep these things in mind. Thank you for that. Um, is there anything that you want to share with caregivers or those who are watching this video? So by that I mean even those people who are well wishers to other caregivers. Anything that you want to say to them?
I think as a caregiver, it's very important to go out there and try to build a support system. Many people will take up your offer, many will not. But you keep trying and you will find people who are compassionate. uh, that was so important for me, being the only child of my parents, because if I didn't have the support system, I wouldn't have been able to support my parents as much as I could have. And the other thing, for those who are well wishers of caregivers, what I would tell them is to, first and foremost, not be judgmental. This is one thing, and maybe I faced a lot, and maybe it's because it was just like how it was hard for me to understand what my parents were going through. It was probably even hard for them to understand what I was going through as a caregiver. So just, to give them space, to hear them out, and to not um, be forceful with your opinions, because sometimes as a caregiver, you are the best person to know what solution works for you. You're always open to ideas, but if for some reason you're rejecting an idea, you're not able to implement an idea, that doesn't mean you're rejecting that person or their thoughts. It just means that the solution is not workable in your situation. And so a lot of times, there would be a lot of conflicts, or I wouldn't say conflicts, but there would be uneasiness arising out of situations that were not judged properly or assessed properly. And and I think it's important for well wishers of caregivers to realize that caregivers will have caregiving burnout, and they will also go through mood swings. They will go through, moments of happiness, and also through moments of, frustration, especially when their loved ones are ailing or are in a serious condition in the hospitals. So yeah, not to judge people at that point of time, it's so important. I think we are very quick to jump to conclusions. We are in this age of, everything has to be instant, and we are very instantaneously judgmental. So that would be my primary message to well wishers of caregivers.
Wow, that last line stayed with me. Um, what I hear now from you is that there were so many emotions, strong emotions, and so many thoughts that you have to sit with. So I want to know, and I'm sure caregivers watching the video would want to know from you is, as an individual, what did you do to cope with those emotions or difficult feelings or thoughts or grief or loss that you experienced? How did you sit with that?
That's a tough question. What I think, being coming to acceptance of the situation is so important. Initially, the reason, at the beginning of my caregiving journey, I had a very tough time for two reasons. One is because I couldn't understand what was going on. The other thing is I was not in acceptance of the situation. But once, with understanding comes acceptance, and once acceptance comes, then you're more at peace. Um, it took me a long time to come to the understanding that my parents are at the end of their journey, and there will be a time when they have to leave, and all I can do is just make sure that they're comfortable and that they're treated with dignity. And there is a quote by Melinda Gates that often used to inspire me, and it still does. If you can make the life of even one person better, your life is worth living. And what used to keep me going is the fact that I knew that if the roles were reversed, my parents would not even think twice. They would not even think twice to do whatever it took to help make sure that I was well taken care of. So it's not too much of um, thoughts that you put through. I mean, it's just I don't know how to explain that, but you don't think through it much. You just act. I mean, you just do whatever needs to be done at that point of time.
But I think the quote and what you shared from your experience stays as a motivation for others.
I hope so.
Yes, it did. Personally, for me, I liked how you accepted the fact that we need support. We need to build that kind of network around us. We need to actively find people, not just well wishers, but also healthcare professionals who will care for us along with the patient. And I really admire the lessons that you had to share with us today.
Just one thing I wanted to add. We had a lot of people who helped take care of my mother and my father, like nurses, attendants, and they would. It was important to find the right people for the patients, but it was also important to be there for them. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship. You know, they are there for you during your times of need, and yes, you are paying them for it, but you also have to be a human being and provide, extend any support that they might need. Like if they have somebody ailing at home, you give them a day off, or if they have something else going on, so it has to be a two-way relationship, because that's the only way you can garner support and create a sturdy support system. So it shouldn't be a one-way relationship.
Working like a team.
That's how
So,
you build a team.
yeah. Thank you for that. I want to know, after listening to your story, after listening to so much, uh, you know, to take away from your story, I want to know how you are feeling at this point.
Looking back, I realize, yes, I might have made some mistakes. My father had passed away 4 months after falling ill, and whatever I learned from my experience of caregiving for him, I made sure I applied that with my mother, and that took us a long way. That took us a long way. Just making sure that I understood how the medical system worked here, what doctors were good, or who would be understanding of my mother's situation and my situation. What kind of help would be understanding of our household needs and caregiving needs. Finding support in the form of, having friends giving you ideas, or like maybe you're not able to find a solution, and then having some friends offer a solution which you might not have thought of. So again, going back to the concept of creating a very robust support system, so you can do that even if you're the only child. You can do that even if you're all by yourself. And it doesn't have to be in the form of relatives or friends. It can be even strangers. And that's what happened in our case. So when I look back, I feel, and, and I don't mean to say this, I say this with a lot of humility, that I did the best I could. I tried the best I could. And my motive was to make sure that I don't have any regrets. So hopefully that works.
Yeah. I am proud of you too.
Thank you.
Yes,
You guys are
I
doing a great job of bringing up the awareness of caregiving in India, which is very important. Caregiving is such a well established concept in the West, but we need to catch up with them soon and bring about recognition for the caregivers.
Yes, and you have contributed to that today by coming forward and sharing your story. I hope that encourages others to come ahead, share their stories, tell us what they've experienced and what they want others to know. Like you mentioned, we also want to help others build a support system for themselves. We want to encourage them to do that. And that was a major takeaway from your conversation today. So, Sudeshna, thank you so much for joining today. Um, I hope that you feel good after sharing your story. This is not the last time that we're getting in touch. We'll for sure keep meeting in the future. So, yeah, thank you. See you soon.
The pleasure is all mine, and thank you so much, Anjali. Thanks to Caregiver Saathi, Bhavna, and her entire team. I really believe in this cause of spreading the awareness of caregivers. Unfortunately, it is still considered a very thankless job, and we need to change that mindset. So, yes, anything, any little bit I can do to move towards that uh, would be great.
We love to have you on in our community.
Thank you. I would love to be there too. It's my privilege.
See you then. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.